Hello and welcome to Mind, Body, Sleep, the podcast for anyone out there who wants to understand and recover from insomnia using a holistic perspective. I'm Beth Kendall, your host. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am most honored to be joined by another Mind, Body, Sleep mentorship alum. Welcome, Kim.
Hi Beth, it's good to be here with you today. Feels very surreal.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And, you emailed me a few weeks back and you gave me the most wonderful update. And just to give the listeners a bit of context, you joined the mentorship back in May of 2023. I went back and checked.
Oh,
and
wow.
I know it's been a while.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to be so grateful to people like you. I think of you guys as like my OGs because you came into the mentorship when it was still relatively young and there was no podcast, or hope stories or anything like that. And it was just you taking a leap of faith and trusting the process. But I was so happy to get your email and hear how things have been going. So why don't we begin with you telling us a little about how insomnia started for you and what that was like?
Gosh, it's a long story. How long have you got?
Yeah, no, I know. There's no such thing as a short insomnia story.
No.
So wherever you want to start is just fine.
Well, I think one of the things that really struck me was that my story is quite different from yours, I think, Beth, in that historically, I've never had any sleep problems at all. So I remember my mum saying when I was a baby, I was a dream. And she'd put me down for 12, I mean, I'm not sure if it's true, but she'd put me down for 12 hours and I'd sleep straight through. And it was a bit of a running joke with my family that, I could nap on demand and sleep standing up or wherever I wanted to. And my husband would always say, but you're such a good sleeper. And so sleep growing up for me was never an issue. It was never really something I thought about. It was never something I really paid attention to. It was just something that happened very naturally for me. And June 2021, it must have been, I found out I was pregnant and obviously overjoyed, very happy. And I entered this sort of started to go into this strange world where people would ask me questions about, are you getting enough rest now because you'll need it when the baby comes, and all these sort of weird comments that I just really wasn't used to. And I was thinking, oh no, is this going to be really difficult for me? Is, everything going to change? And then I had my little boy in, when was it, May 2022, he was born. I had quite a difficult birth with him, but we were getting on just fine, except for the fact that, again, I just entered this world where sleep was the only thing that people seemed to talk about. So I'd go into a supermarket and I would say, people would ask me, how are you getting on? How's he sleeping? And I'd go to these mum groups with other mums and people would say, are you sleeping? Are you getting any sleep? How's the baby sleeping? Yeah. And it was utterly bizarre for me. I mean, in ordinary day life, if you went into a supermarket, you wouldn't just start speaking to a stranger about how they'd been sleeping the night before. And it was just a whole new world. And I started to panic, and I was thinking, do I look tired? Do I look like I'm struggling? Have I got, knackered mum written all over my head?
Yeah.
And I think at that point, sleep started to become a bit of a sensitive topic for me, I think, when it never really had previously. Now, I was, again, managing just about okay as you can as a new mum, and starting to find my feet, starting to get into a bit of a groove. I had been exclusively breastfeeding as well, so I think that all the night shifts fell on me, and the sleep deprivation did start to take its toll. But again, I was getting on just fine.
Yeah.
And then I remember the day, I could put it in the diary. It was May 2022. And I think it was a combination of things that actually happened all at one time. So my period came back after giving birth, which my hormones were obviously just absolutely wild. Mm. We hit some sort of sleep regression with my son, so he was waking up every 45 minutes. And then just to top things off, we were given some really difficult news about my mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. So I think I told you, Beth, but it was really difficult. She was actually given a terminal prognosis.
Yeah.
And then my mum was really unwell. And I remember thinking at one point that we might realistically lose her as well. And I think the combination of everything just hit at once, and it was sort of a perfect storm.
Yep.
And I remember going to bed one night in May, as I had done, my son lying next to me in his cot, my husband next to me, and I just sat there wide awake. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I just can't sleep. So I took myself off to the spare room, and I thought, do you know what, I'll just, come away and I'll catch a bit of sleep, and then everything will be, feel better in the morning. But that night, I think sleep completely evaded me, and I woke up and I felt, to be honest with you, completely broken. I remember thinking, on top of everything else that's going on in my life right now, I really need to be able to catch a break and to rest, to be able to sleep. But for some reason, I just couldn't. And I think because my son was waking up every 45 minutes throughout the night, the pressure to sleep just became too much.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to my husband and saying, I haven't slept a wink. I haven't slept all night. What am I going to do? And he was like, just, don't panic. It's okay. You'll sleep well tonight because you've had such a bad night. And I remember speaking to friends and they said the same thing.
Yeah.
And I went to bed the next night and it was, again, the same story.
Yeah.
And I just remember lying there feeling so scared, I think, absolutely helpless. And, we'd had this news about my mother-in-law. We'd had some concerns about my mum, and I'd just become a mum myself. And I was thinking, this little boy needs me. I need to be able to sleep. I need to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I woke up, well, I didn't wake up. I, got up the next day, and I remember just ringing the doctors and saying to them, look, I'm exhausted. I don't know what to do. Help me. Do something, please. Like, I'm in a desperate situation. I haven't slept for nights.
Yeah.
I have a baby that's waking up all the time. I'm trying to deal with a lot in my personal life. Like, everything is just too much. I'm broken. And the doctor was very sympathetic and very understanding. She ultimately gave me a load of sleeping tablets. She put me on antidepressants. And I remember saying to her, I don't feel like my mood is like low. I don't feel depressed. I don't think I need these. But I was ultimately in a situation where I just felt like I had no choice. I felt I had I was desperate.
Yeah.
So I just took everything she gave me. I had a right cocktail of, different medications, sedatives. I took it all. And she said, I remember her saying to me, if you take the sleeping medication now, that will help in the short term. Then what will happen is once the antidepressant kicks in and, things settle down for you, sleep will follow. But it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember talking about this with you, back last year. Mm-hmm. And hearing you talk about this, well, first of all, I think so many people are going to be able to relate to this perfect storm that you described, like having so many people fixated on sleep while you were going through, your pregnancy, and then, the stress with your mom, and then having a new baby and having to get up every 45 minutes, and then having that night where you didn't sleep, which I'm sure felt shocking given your background as, kind of identifying as this person that can sleep, standing straight up or can sleep anywhere. That was probably really, really scary. And it sounds like, it's so understandable how this was sort of primed to happen for so many reasons that, are so easy to see once you're out of insomnia, just in our society, how we can start like setting the stage for something like this. But when you're in it and you don't know and you don't have that education, that is so scary. So it sounds like this was like that night in May, the beginning of like where your orientation with sleep started to change into the efforting, right? Like starting with the medication.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So
you're right though, Beth. The background, I think that perpetuated things for me because it just reinforced to me that there was something now wrong with me.
Right.
Because if I was historically, my husband would say, you know, one of the best sleepers he'd ever known, and I couldn't sleep now. And I think you sort of conjure up this memory that for me, sleep had always been perfect. And I think that's obviously not true. There has been times in my life historically where I've not slept, but the difference was I didn't have any fear around it. I didn't have any, you know, it didn't scare me. So I didn't make a mental note of it. I didn't remember. I put it down to a bad night. I got up, I moved on, you know, sleep followed. This was different. And I think I was just convinced at this stage that there was something wrong with me. And the sleeping meds, I mean, they solved the initial problem in that they helped me fall asleep. But within a couple of hours, I was wide awake again and I couldn't drift off. And I was thinking, I can't even sleep with sleeping pills. There is something very seriously wrong with me now. And I remember my friend saying to me, oh, you know, go and stay somewhere else, have a break from, you know, being up all night, take your sleeping meds, have a night, catch up, you'll feel fine tomorrow. It just didn't happen. I just still, despite all the medication I've been put on, I just still couldn't sleep. And the antidepressants didn't help with sleep. They didn't do anything for me apart from make me feel, I mean, slightly like, for me, they just made me feel slightly like a zombie.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, I mean, I think I remember speaking to you about it. It was just, horrendous.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, oh, looking back, you know, first of all, how normal it is to have that kind of sleep, you know, to have sleep disruption when when you have a new baby and you've got stressful life factors going on, and, you know, insomnia or not, people struggle with sleep. And, you know, starting the medication, I'm sure, like thinking, oh, this medication is going to take care of it. And then having that hyperarousal sort of still showing up even with the medication. That's when the belief probably came on board. Oh, you know, there really is something wrong with my brain. And girl, I mean, I lived in that, you know, I had that myself. So I know what that belief feels like. So you went the medication route, and then it was about a year till you came into Mind Body Sleep. So what happened between then and Mind Body Sleep?
Gosh, wow. So I think, you know, Beth, I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I did the only thing that I know how to do, and that's problem solve.
Of course.
You know, we're taught growing up that effort equals reward. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to use all my problem solving skills that I've been taught at university and in my job, and I'm going to fix this problem.
Yes.
But little did I know that, you know, I obviously know it now, but I got caught in the insomnia trap. And the more I tried to fix it, the worse I made the problem. But oh, Beth, I think I spoke to you. I tried everything.
Yeah.
There was probably a point in time where if you said to me, I need to do 50 laps around the garden, stand on my head and do a headstand and a spin anti-clockwise whilst holding a glass of water every night before bed, you know, doing a chart, I probably would have tried it. I think I tried various forms of different medication. I ultimately decided to come off all my meds completely cold turkey, which in hindsight may have been a bad, I don't know, but that's what I decided to do.
Yeah.
At some point I think I was convinced that, having read the side effects of the antidepressant, that might have been causing or perpetuating the insomnia. I went to the doctors and I had decided that perhaps it was hormones, because that might have been the only thing that had changed since I'd had my son. So I paid for blood tests to be done. I mean, they all came back as completely normal. And I remember just saying to the doctor, you know, incomplete, almost dead. What are you going to do? Like, I can't just carry on like this. And they were just very blasé about it. You know, well, not much we can do. I think I tried every single supplement that I could get my hands on online. Anything that said sleep or that would help with sleep, I tried. I read books about sleep, and I think one book in particular was, I don't know if you know about it, but it's about how to optimize sleep for athletes. And I mean, it really was the wrong book to read at the wrong time, because it was all about how to optimize sleep, and obviously I wasn't even sleeping at the time. So for the moment I woke up, I needed to have so many minutes of sunlight on my face. I needed to eat a certain diet. I needed to avoid, you know, unnatural light in the evening. So if my husband put the bathroom light on just before bed, I would, you know, absolutely freak out. And I was just living in this world where as soon as the afternoon hit, the fear, the dread of bedtime, it was awful. And I was at a point where my son was actually starting to sleep through the night, and I was thinking, you know, I don't even have that pressure now of waking up all the time, and he's sleeping, but I'm still not sleeping. I had a device that was meant to help me sleep. I paid a lot of money for it, and obviously it didn't do anything. And then I got to a place where I think it was the end of 2022, I decided to do CBTI, and I did a course of that. And I mean, it was slightly strange in that it helped because I was starting to sleep, but the fear, the conditions that I had placed on myself to be able to sleep were almost ridiculous. So I had a very strict sleep routine between certain hours. I wasn't allowed to nap at all, even if I hadn't slept. I wasn't sleeping in the same bed as my husband because just fear that he might disturb me at some point. If I woke in the night at all, which I was obviously doing quite frequently, or if I couldn't sleep, which was most nights, to be honest, I had to get up and leave the bedroom. I wasn't allowed to spend any time in the day during in bed or in my bedroom. I followed this schedule, and my sleep did actually start to improve, but I still lived with this fear. I wasn't going out in the evenings because I thought that anything that could possibly interfere with my sleep or disrupt it. So I wasn't really living any sort of life. I was just sort of living in fear and, in this weird sort of limbo state. And then I remember seeing a post on Instagram, and it was one of your posts. And I think you said something about how you can still be sleeping but have insomnia.
Yeah.
And that really, that's where I was at. And that really resonated with me. And I think that's when I then took the step and got in contact with you.
Yep. I think that makes so much sense. And, I say so often that sleep isn't the solution to insomnia, which, doesn't make sense because, of course, that's what, that's what we're seeking is sleep. But then if there's still that background fear, that's still kind of running your life, you're not living life the way you really want to live it, which I think this is really where the moving back into trust piece comes into play, and that's what can take some time. And that's really where I focused my attention with Mind, Body, Sleep is just, creating a series of perspective shifts that will move you back towards that trust, in a way that the brain will sort of allow it or accept it and move, let go of some of these survival patterns around sleep and back towards trust. So I'm so glad that you found my post on Instagram and
me too.
Yeah.
Liberating.
So you came in, you were one of my OGs.
I was.
And how was that? How did that go? I remember talking, and I remember you were, I think you were not too sure, or kind of like you were you were open-minded and you were like, I'm willing, this sounds right, but how was the experience for you? How was your recovery process?
Well, I think initially when I started the course, I found it just completely liberating. I think you were the only person that told me that I wasn't broken, that there was nothing actually that I needed to do to fix my sleep, that I didn't have a problem that I needed to solve. And that was completely different to anything I'd been told by anyone else or anything else I'd read. And that was sort of a first moment of, okay, this is different and this makes sense. And going through the course and understanding why the insomnia had started. I mean, looking back now and talking about the perfect storm, it makes a lot of sense and I can see it from an outsider's perspective. But when I was in it at the time, I just couldn't see it. And so it was that first step, I think, and going through the course and understanding why it happened to me, it just changed my perspective on everything, really. And it just felt completely, it was such a light bulb moment. Wow, like it really, really hit. And I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. So, I have to trust what you're telling me and the process. Now, I think the journey from that point onwards hasn't been necessarily straightforward. And there's been, difficult nights, speed bumps, all sorts of things along the way. But it wasn't I know the content of the course, and then it wasn't overnight that it just kicked in and I started to sleep again. It didn't work like that.
Yeah.
And I think at points I remember feeling frustrated and thinking, well, I know all this stuff, so why isn't sleep following? What's going on here? And, or I'd start to have a period where I'd start to sleep again, and then a nice little bump would come along or a little curveball to keep me on my toes and throw me out of the, recovery. And I'd email you and I'd say, Beth, what do I need to do? And, you'd put me back on track. But there were times when I'd end up back in the Google trap of, do I need to fix it? But I think under your guidance, I mean, one of the first things we actually worked on, and one of the hardest things for me, was actually undoing all the things I learned in the CBTI. Because they were a lot of the things that were causing me a lot of fear around sleep. So you saying to me, nap if you want to. I mean, historically, if I wanted to have a nap on an afternoon, I would have not thought twice about it. Yeah, I love the nap. On a winter's evening, if I wanted to get comfy on the sofa, put the fire on, have blankets, watch a movie, if I dozed off, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have thought anything about it. But after doing the CBTI, I mean, I was in a place where after that I was, it was 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, but I couldn't go to bed. And I remember sitting on the cold, hard floor trying to keep myself awake. So it's sort of unlearning all of those.
Yeah. Taking the rules out of it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Taking the rules. I know.
Ripping them up.
Yeah, exactly. Just throw them right out the window.
Yeah.
I know. I know that really throws people when they come in, and a lot of people come from CBTI, and I went through that twice myself. And it's got merits. It helps people. So I don't ever want to dismiss it or, but it's much more rigidity, more rules. Mm-hmm. And then people come into Mind, Body, Sleep, and I say the only rule is there are no rules. So, we don't need rules for sleep. We just decide, we just, we decide what we want to do. Exactly. And I love what you said about naps, because that's such a common one. I've been wanting to do an episode on naps, because that's another area, you've got something like a delicious nap, which is such a wonderful thing to enjoy, that millions of people all over the world do on the daily. Mm-hmm. And, there can be this sense that we're going to be punished, or we're going to have to pay a price, or, we're going to ruin our sleep. And, I think just Just taking a common sense approach and doing basically what you would have done before you had insomnia is always such a good guideline. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about maybe 3, 4 months into the program, and my sleep actually, torn up the rule book, and my sleep had started to improve. But there
Yeah.
was a couple of things that were still probably holding me back, and that was that I wasn't sleeping in the same bed as my husband, and for me, that was something I was wanting to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I was still a little bit reserved about doing anything in the evening which might disturb my sleep. And I remember speaking to you about both of them, and you said to me, with my husband, rather than seeing it as a sleep effort, maybe we could reframe the way we think about it. And actually, for a lot of new parents and couples, sleeping in separate beds at a time when, I have a young child who's waking up is actually a perfectly sensible and normal thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to give myself some grace, and I decided to go with it. And I was like, do you know what? If it has to be this way for now, it will be. It won't be forever, but I'll go with it. And then I think at that point as well, I had this realization that I was just isolating myself from a lot of people, and I wasn't going out and doing things. And I just thought, do you know what? If I wait until my sleep is where I want it to be, then I don't know how long I could be waiting.
Right.
And that was sort of those two things happened around the same time. And that was a sort of another light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
And I realized that, I didn't go wild, but an occasional dinner date with my husband, a night down the pub with my friends, going to the cinema, all things I used to enjoy, like occasionally, I just decided that, do you know what? I'm going to start doing them again.
Mm-hmm.
And my sleep didn't get better straight away. And I remember coming back and lying there and thinking, I can't sleep. And then I don't really know what happened apart from the only way I can explain it is for a period of time, I just stopped. I think because I was so busy.
Yes.
I just stopped thinking about it. And then I had a moment where I was like, oh, hang on, I'm not thinking about it. And actually, I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
Or I'm going out and it's not taking me hours to fall asleep.
Right.
And it was sort of these few moments. And then again, a few months later, I thought, oh, I went out last night and I got into bed and I fell straight asleep. And gradually, over a period of, I think, about a year, I just realized that I was going out, I was starting to sleep again.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of slowly, just these realizations, or my husband would say to me, oh, you're not obsessed, you haven't asked me what time it is, or you've not been checking the clocks, or you're not obsessed with how many hours sleep you've got, or we haven't been talking about sleep. And just these little realizations that actually things were a bit easier.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting how it is because I think it really sneaks up on you,
Exactly.
It does. It's like you just realize like, oh, I'm not thinking about that anymore. Or I'm not like making a decision through the filter of, well, how is this going to affect my sleep? And, it's not this like eureka moment as much as like, oh, you just notice you're living your life differently. And, I loved this part of your email. You wrote, it's strange looking back because I had to do things a bit back to front. Instead of waiting for sleep to improve before I started living, I had to start living first. And that just really, that says it all right there. And that's a big part of the mentorship in terms of like helping people shift that focus first, because it's so normal to think, oh, well, once I get over this, then I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and it's really just doing whatever part of, even if it's just X, just doing a part of X. That's what eventually it is the opposite. And I love that. I loved reading that.
it feels very counterproductive.
Yes, it does.
And if you break your leg, they wouldn't, if you're playing football, they wouldn't say to you, you need to go and start playing football and then your leg will heal.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just those moments where you realize, I'm not thinking about it, and I'm living my life, and this feels quite
Yeah.
nice. And yeah, I think then the final sort of step for me was going back in the same bed as my husband. And this, for me, felt like a challenge that I just didn't know if I could overcome. And I don't know why, because for 15 years I've slept in the same bed as him and he's never disturbed me. He's not a snorer. I've never had any problems with it. And actually, I was thinking, maybe I need to address this. And then out of the blue, I got an email, one of your emails, and it was a podcast about bed sharing. And I think it was about 15 minutes. And I remember thinking, I'm going to listen to this. And I did. And I sent it on to my husband. And I said, can you listen to this? Because it explains so well exactly how I feel and why this is an issue for me. It's nothing to do with you or, it's just because my body is kicking up some fuss about it. It doesn't like it. And we spoke about it and we said he was very understanding. He has been throughout this whole process, but he was like, when you want to, we can think about it. And I remember thinking, okay, well, we'll try it, but it's got to be on a day where we've got no plans the following day or the day after that. And at a time when my son is, I know, when he's going through a good spell of sleep and he's not unwell, and there's got to be a sort of perfect time, and then I'll try and address it. And then I thought to myself, do you know what? Let's just give it a go.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go well, I can try again.
Yes.
So it was a random Monday night, and I just said, stay in bed. Don't go, like, neither of us are going to the spare room, stay in bed.
Yeah.
And I remember lying there and thinking, okay, I can't sleep. But you talked about being the observer and observing what your brain was doing. And I was like, okay, here we go. I understand what's happening. I know why you're kicking up a fuss. And then the next thing I know, I wake up and it was 6 o'clock. And I'd slept. And then I haven't gone back into the spare room. And if I tried at any point previously to sleep in the same bed as him, and then I'd had a night where I couldn't sleep, I'd instantly gone back to, okay, well, we need to sleep in separate rooms again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I haven't done that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so amazing to hear. And I think what really helps that along, and what you've done in this process of rejoining your husband, is you kind of let it be okay wherever you were and whatever happened. I always say we're going, we don't need to do it perfectly, and it's in that allowing of whatever happens that it's easier. It's a retraining process. It's like when we're okay with it, we're sort of teaching our brain that, hey, whatever happens is okay. We're not shooting for perfection. And that's what lessens the hyperarousal, So I'm so glad that podcast episode helped, and that you're sleeping with your husband again. And that's such a big one, rejoining a bed partner is usually one of the later things to go. So very common.
Yeah, and it felt like the final piece in the puzzle, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember talking to people about it, and they were like, well, if you can't sleep and you're just lying next to him, just enjoy being there. But I mean, at the time, the thought of sleeping next to, or lying awake next to someone who was sleeping, felt like utter torture. I couldn't think of anything worse. But now it's, if I can't sleep, I just enjoy being there. But to be honest with you, Beth, I get into bed and I fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I wake up in the night, I need the toilet, but I get back into bed and I go to sleep, or I just enjoy being there.
Yeah.
Or I'm waking up occasionally by my son, but it doesn't bother me now.
Yeah. 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 I could tell from your email that you're reaching that stage of where you realize, like, just you can't really ever fall prey to it the same. It doesn't mean like those fears don't ever show up. Like they might show up for oddball reasons sometimes, but you just don't, they don't, you're more like, wow, that's so interesting, you know, that these old fears would still kind of show up every once in a while, but they don't really affect you the same, you know, you're not so close to them.
Not at all. No, they don't have the same hold on me like they used to.
Yes, exactly. They just don't have the same grip, you know?
No.
So glad to hear this. And I was going to say, like, what would you say, Kim, to, you know, to someone who's still on the climb, if you had any advice for them?
Gosh, I mean, I think the first thing I'd say is I know how difficult it is. I know what it feels like to be in the depths of the desperation and how awful it felt. I think, I mean, it sounds cliche, doesn't it? But ultimately hang in there because, I mean, mine's a prime example. It can and it will get better.
Yeah.
I think the best thing that helped me was, well, a couple of things along the way that were quite big things were taking the pressure off, so going timeless at night.
Yeah.
So not counting how many hours sleep I'd had and having no rules around sleep.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest change came when I just decided not to postpone my joy. I just decided that I had to carry on living because either I was going to, you know, sit at home and not sleep, or I was going to carry on, do the things that I like doing, even if I didn't sleep. I think that mindset change and that it's like loosening the grip of it over me is when that I started to see, again, not instantly, and it wasn't an overnight thing, but slowly, things just got a little bit easier. And obviously there were bumps along the way and, you know, life's thrown up some difficult stuff for us again recently, but the sleep just hasn't, you know, the fear just hasn't cropped up in the same way.
Yeah. Yep. Wonderful. And were there any silver linings that came from having insomnia for you?
I think, I mean, I always used to say to my husband, I want to go back to the Kim that could sleep and prior to the insomnia. But I think, again, it sounds cliche, but it's a journey, isn't it? And it's taught me an awful lot. It's taught me really that there aren't any preconditions to being happy and living life. I think you sometimes get caught in this trap that you need to be sleeping, or this needs to be solved, or you need, you know, a bigger house or a different job before you can be happy. But actually, you don't. And I think having a little boy is, you know, he doesn't wake up after a bad night's sleep and say, you know, Mummy, we need to stay at home today. He's like, come on, let's go to the park. You know, he doesn't postpone his joy. He just gets on. He lives in the moment. And I think that was really a silver lining for me out of all of this. It just made me realise that I don't need to wait around or do anything before I can just carry on living my life, really. And that's been pretty amazing, to be honest. I mean, am I grateful this happened? I don't know. Ask me a year or two ago, and I think I probably would have said no. But in some sort of weird way now, I think I've learned a lot from it. And yeah, it's been difficult. And probably the journey's been a lot longer than I expected it to be. That first night in May, I thought, you know, give it a week or two and I'll be back and sleeping. And there I was 2 years later. But yeah.
Yeah. So well said, Kim. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share your story with us. These hope stories are my favorite episodes to do because I know that they will find the right people. So thank you a million times over.
You're very welcome. And I mean, again, I was in such a bad place, but just looking back now, honestly, it's just incredible, really, how far I've come with your help, Beth. So I thought I would update you and share the good news.
You made me so happy. Those emails always make my day. So all the alums out there, if you ever want to send me an update, just know I just love them. I just eat them up. I'm smiling from ear to ear. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. I'm Beth Kendall, and this is the Mind, Body, Sleep podcast. Bye for now. Thanks for being here today. If you love what you heard on today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. And if you need more support with your sleep, join me in the Mind, Body, Sleep Mentorship. This 3-month one-on-one program will transform your relationship with sleep so you can get back to living the life that you love, free from the fear of not sleeping. Head on over to bethkendall.com for more details. I'll see you next time.